Hello everyone, this is Nitin from Meltwater, and I have been asked to speak about data is the new oil, or data is the underrated piece of the digital marketing puzzle. I don't know if I'm live or not yet. The moment the comments start coming in, I'll come to know. But I can quickly tell you that Meltwater, where the company I represent, is a global leader in online media intelligence and monitoring. And we are right now serving around 23,000 clients globally who are relying on Meltwater in terms of gathering data over online media channels. That could be from Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, blogs, forums, discussion boards. So as you can see that there is lots and lots of new data centers, or I would say that there are data points which can be collected over the internet. So as I can see now that there are people, those who are joining in. So hi Saloni, hi Desh, hi Abhilash, Shrita, Vedak, and Suryakant. So what I'm going to do is maybe give you a little bit of purview in terms of what has happened around data in the last few years, to be honest. And to start with, I would give you a little bit of context around data. So if you look at the concept, we are saying that we live in an information society. There are there are people, those who basically are surrounded by too many ways in which people can deliver or receive information today. Of course, the traditional mediums are there, but the new mediums have become much and more relevant. And if I have to give you an understanding, since the inception of mankind, and that's very interesting, 90% of the world's data has been made in the last 2 years. So which kind of gives an idea that there is a lot of content which is being generated on a regular basis. And this content is being generated and uploaded majorly through the internet and through the more new age mediums altogether. And this is happening majorly because of the huge mobile penetration and huge mobile utility. Over 2 billion people use the internet on a day-to-day basis. And if I have to give you some numbers which might be of interest to you guys, in fact, there is a penetration of internet now is around 4.02 billion people. Active social media users around 3.2 billion people. And mobile users is 5 billion people. So you can imagine that 70% of the world's population now has access to mobile. And they are actively using social media through mobile is around 3 billion people across the world. So why this information is important? It is important because what is now happening, that there has been a massive growth over internet penetration in a lot of places. And a couple of places which I can quickly talk about are linked with popular channels. So, in fact, Twitter is seeing around 450,000 mentions on a regular basis, and then it has just grown by around 400. This numbers are around 60 seconds. And this is like a beautiful infographic you possibly might have seen on a regular basis. So, what we are doing right now is we are trying to figure out ways in which we can scrape maximum amount of information available on the internet, and then try to make sense out of it. So just to give you a little bit of idea, that every 30 seconds, almost a huge amount of data pool is being uploaded on the internet. We are talking about somewhere around, on a real-time basis, 5,700 tweets actually are added on a regular basis. That's a lot of information. So what is going to happen, and I heard a lot of speakers today during this SM Live session, and most of the people spoke about social media and how it is very important. I heard Vineet also, he mentioned a lot about CRM and its importance. And what I realized that most of the people are right now, or most of the digital marketing which is happening is right now taking place around news or digital news or editorial publications, or are taking place across social media. So my interest in general is linked with the idea of what does social media mean. So social media is nothing but any particular website which allows people to talk about or gives a perception. That's, according to me, a social media channel. So that means that from a monitoring standpoint, so Meltwater standpoint, we basically are tracking all these popular social media channels, but also making commercial efforts in terms of gathering information from those kind of sources which are not that popular. For example, customer complaints, one of the biggest areas which we are focusing on. We are also focusing on new ways like iTunes and Google Play Store also allows a lot of information to being written. So what we are trying to put across is that all this information right now, and what we are seeing is that there is a big paradigm shift in terms of how internet will offer data in future. So just to give you an example, today there are so many people, those who are posting something or the other on the internet. So if I have to, ask the audience in general, if I go through an Instagram account of a person or a Twitter account of a person, I would come to know a lot about that person in general, like what kind of person he is, what kind of things does he like, what kind of things does he talk about. And just imagine now, expand this into an ecosystem where there are, where we are talking about billions and billions of data points. So then we can easily understand that in future, the modern day marketer will basically rely on more focused data points. For example, let me give you an example. We will be in future looking into how we can materialize or correlate analysis between number of job posts done by a company vis-a-vis the expansion plans of the company, or maybe it could be the kind of patent filings a company is doing, and what are the future plans of that particular thing. So what we are seeing is that the paradigm shift which we have talked about is majority of the times in the past, if you understand what big data talks about. So can I just quickly answer that question? Yes, definitely. I believe that, do you think brands misuse data, like collect phone numbers and IDs under false pretext? Where should the brands draw a line? Okay, this is a very valid question. I think so. It is very much linked with data security and what Facebook suffered earlier. And now you know that GDPR guidelines have come into the picture. And with the GDPR guidelines, what will happen now is that these kind of things will not take place. And if a user feels that his data or private data has been shared by a company, then that person can easily sue a brand, for example, and the brand will have to pay an extremely hefty amount. So, for example, us as an organization have also made sure that we are not, we are completely GDPR compliant, and we actually make sure that we are not sharing any information which is not permitted by us. So it's very hard to say that if brands are really misusing data in that pretext right now, because there could be some which might be, there could be some which are not doing at all. But by putting these kind of guidelines into place, I think so the data providers like us are definitely making sure that it is not going in the wrong hands. So going back to the point, I hope that Suken have answered your question. Going back to the point of what I really highlighted on the data points is that traditionally, most of the companies have been focusing a lot on internal data. And this internal data is data which is linked with information which is, US Meltwater, where do you draw a line to respect consumer privacy? Do you think Indian brands are using data aptly? I think so. In terms of drawing the line, according to the new GDPR guidelines, I can quickly tell you that there are two kind of things which Meltwater falls into. We are at one juncture, we are data providers, and the other juncture, we are data collectors. So there are different kind of guidelines which we have to follow in terms of ensuring what kind of data we are collecting, and secondly, ensuring what kind of data we are circulating further. So these are different kind of products which basically allow us to do so. But the ideology on the front of the second question which you asked, Abhilash, on do you think Indian brands are using data aptly? It's hard to say, as I mentioned earlier, because ultimately there might be some who are trying to, and they are, enforcing a lot of, paid AdWords, or they're utilizing the information in a way. But most of the time, the companies can come back saying this, that everything which we utilize or used is the information which the consumer provided. Now, it might be that consumer is being tricked in terms of getting that kind of information in the past, but now it is not even possible because of the new guidelines coming into the picture. So right now, I believe in terms of utility of data, it's on the internet specifically, it's completely up to you in terms of how do you, how much do you allow the ecosystem which you're participating in terms of gathering your information and delivering that information. If you might have seen recently, Facebook has updated their guidelines, and they literally ask you that what kind of data do you want us to collect. And that is a good step. And now you can actually see what kind of information they are collecting, and then you can pause or stop whatever information you do not want them to actually collect or share with anybody. What I was talking about in the meantime was linked with how the paradigm shift had taken place in terms of consuming data and how internet is going to play a big role in the future. So the majority of the companies in the past had been utilizing internal data which was being collected internally by organizations, and this data was like information of sales information, footfall information, hiring and firing information, and then, of course, supply chain distribution information. But you might realize that all this information being collected was mined within the organization, and major business decisions were taken out of that. But now in the future, a lot of reliance will take place on outside data, and data which is because the internet has started knowing more than the company or the person himself. And that is a very interesting area to actually explore. And most of the information is publicly available. So, for instance, if there is a particular company, let's say PepsiCo, and so PepsiCo, if has any kind of plan to actually launch a new operation in Kenya, and so what they would do is that the first place they would actually invest their time and energy is to find the right talent in that particular country. So now, if there is a proper mechanism in terms of collecting anomalies from the internet, they could easily, the moment we would be able to alert them in future that we are seeing a very interesting anomaly with PepsiCo's hiring. PepsiCo has started hiring in Kenya. Now that information is going to be extremely vital, because neither has Kenya mentioned about their plans of expansion in the PR on social media. They have not made it public. But what they would do, they would hire a consultant. They might hire hire a senior director or a CEO in that particular country, and that information will be available to its competitors way before it is out in the public, and that will help to take much more strategic decisions in the future. And this whole concept will be called outside inside in the future. Yeah, I definitely think, Sarah, that GDPR-like policy should be accepted by the rest of the countries, 100%. And how will it affect brands? I think so affects in the brand space. Thank you very much, Sukena. Yes, thank you very much. I do have got that comment earlier on Mr. Bean, and ironically, Hitesh also took the initiative to actually explain myself on all the adverts that Mr. Bean of digital marketing is going to speak. So that was funny. Yes, from the GDPR standpoint, the brands will be affected. The brands will be affected in the way of collecting the information. Most of the times, these brands will be consumers of a lot of data, and if they will be consumers, they might be able to. They will be restricted in a lot of information which the public or the consumer does not want to share with them. Okay, very good question. What parameters should one take into consideration before signing up for a tool? Okay, so I think so. My personal opinion for any particular person who wants to invest in a social media listening tool or a data gathering tool is the ability to search and ability to filter. The challenge which basically happens today is majority of the companies, majority of the tools today basically have very basic style of searching. And if the search is robust, by default, you get better results or you collect more qualitative information, and then your analysis by default becomes better, which leads to better decision making in the future. So search would ideally, my advice would be that if somebody is looking for a particular platform, these are the key areas. Does the platform offer a Boolean language or tracking in Booleans? Does the platform actually gives you the capability of understanding what kind of ecosystem do they monitor? What kind of variety of areas do they listen into? And third and final thing is the UI. The user experience should be extremely simple, that it can be easily used by anybody. Okay, how can you find correct statistical data on behavior of people? Okay, behavior of people is a very tricky point, a very tricky topic, but I can give you an example, Jay. We basically started looking into something very interesting for a very different brand. So we work with a leading jewelry brand in India, and they wanted us to understand that what should be the next thing which they should do. rather than looking into postmortem analysis on what has already happened on social media or on mainstream media and all these things. They were very keen to understand what is going to happen in the future. So what we had to do, we had to go back, and something which I would like to mention to the listeners if they are here, is that whenever you are looking into social media listening or online media listening, make sure that you're not limiting yourself listening only to the brand. If you're only listening to the brand, you are not doing justice to the platform which you have actually spent the money on. You have to actually look into, so from a behavior standpoint, Jay, I think so the best thing to do is, there are lots of tools today which give you understanding of what kind of things do they like, what kind of things do they talk about, what kind of age demographic do they belong to, what kind of income do they fall into. In fact, one of the tools which we offer specifically for the US countries, we have started giving them information about what kind of caste or creed do they belong to. So of course, there is a lot of information which is publicly available, which people are unknowingly leaving out, and it can be mined into various ways of understanding the behavioral patterns. So one of the things which we can simply say is linked with. So I'm going to the next question. Is if you're doing listening for any brand, especially related to political, what should be kept in the mind? How to escalate negative things ASAP? Okay, so I think so from a perspective of listening for any particular brand, or if you're talking about listening related to political parties, if for political parties, the best thing which I would like to tell you is that majority of the conversation, or 50% or 40% of conversations which happen or opinions which are generated in local languages. So if you are looking for a platform or a tool, you need to make sure that you're asking them whether there is a capability of tracking or listening into the regional languages in the fonts in which they are written. And that is something which is very important. From an escalation of negative things, I think so now the technology has come in where the systems use artificial intelligence. We basically had executive alerts, one of our platform, where we can detect anomalies based on the kind of behavior that particular content is showcasing. So for instance, if there is a hashtag which has started to gain momentum, the system will give you an immediate alert as a push notification on the phone. And then, of course, escalation of negative things can become faster. And of course, the reaction time will also reduce. Kirti has asked a question. This is absolute insight about data. Data is a new all. What is the value proposition of Social Samosa? Help me understand. Okay, very interesting question, Kirti. Very challenging one. I think so. Social Samosa comes into a perspective of there is a lot of things which Social Samosa has been doing, and my association with them has been for a very long time. Now, in fact, this particular event which you're doing from today onwards, or maybe doing today, there will be a lot of information which can be gathered and then can be mined into more intelligence. Let's say the kind of questions which were asked, which kind of gives an understanding that next time if a brand or if a software or if there is a service which wants to partner with you, then you can simply say these are the kind of questions which were asked or which were unanswered, for instance. Maybe that is an opportunity which you can generate. Similarly, Social Samosa has a huge unique visitors on their website, and that itself is a great value proposition. So from a data standpoint, when do the people come in? What time do they come in? What do they do with your tool? What kind of content do they engage with? If you are able to bring that and pilot together in a nice way, I think there will be a lot of value which you can generate for Social Samosa as well. Is the Indian government taking the problem of data invasions lightly? What should be the first rule that India needs to apply? I think so. Invasion of data as a point has not been a big concern in India from a perspective of taking immediate action, but I don't think so. It should be a statement saying that they are not taking it. They're taking it very lightly, considering the kind of borders which we are into. There is a very I'm aware of this fact that there are a lot of things which are taking place in the background on terms of ensuring that invasion of data is something which can be taken care of in a much better way. In fact, I don't know if you're aware of this, but RBI now has started promoting their ads about how you should be safe in terms of sharing information. So because if the data is there, the first problem and the underlining problem always will be from the source. Actually, the source is giving information, and that's what Facebook's argument was. that the source is like, I did not steal any information. The information was given by the public to me. And when it was given, it was mentioned that we might share it to other partners. And so at least it's up to us whether we want to share it or we don't want to share it. So that is it. And then what should be the first rule that India needs to apply? I think so. GDPR compliance, if is quite there. It's written in and drafted in the right fashion, and it is quite hefty fines, which basically can be levied on people or can be levied on companies. So if that is something which is ultimately accepted by the government, I think it will be a very, very good thing as well. So as I see that, how can this, Lubna has asked, how can this data be translated into tangible leads? Okay, that's I think so. Data into leads is a very, very long journey, to be honest, because first of all, but it can sometimes be very quickly converted into something. So I'm working with some of the brands where, in fact, my own company, we track about like head of marketing or marketing directors or CMOs or CEOs. We track any kind of news being published about them. And then we make sure that we read this news. And if we found out that there is a new article or a new item which has been written about a marketing director, that for us is a lead. So the idea is, from a data standpoint, I can say that every individual data point can be a lead. But if I tell you that if I collect a large pool of data, then I can only get an insight. So insight would be as simple. Going back to the jewelry brand I was talking about, a jewelry brand basically said that, can you tell me what should be done in future? And we felt that for a jewelry brand, how can we really give them trends? And are we trying to, let's try to do something different. So we started listening into color. And listening into color is a very, very wide topic, extremely big, extremely huge. And it's extremely difficult also to zero down which color we should use. So we found out that Pantone as a company launches the color of the year every year. And that year, the color was Marsala or Marsala, Marsala. And we just listened to the conversation happening on Marsala as a word in December. And we found out there were 50,000 conversations across the internet on the word Marsala. And people were constantly talking about bag accessories. They were talking about jewelry. They were talking about dresses. So we kind of understood that jewelry is a sub-segment in the color division also. And next year, Pantone actually launched two colors. They launched Rose Quartz and Serenity. Rose Quartz is light pink color and Serenity is light blue color. Now, what happened was both of these colors, immediately the moment they were launched, they went into getting 50,000 to 70,000 mentions in the span of 1 week. And what we figured out that 40% of these conversations were actually on jewelry. Now, that in itself is a very, very big insight for a jewelry brand, because ultimately all this while I was even talking about it, I'm sure you might be thinking that jewelry only has three colors. One is gold, one is silver, and of course you can use diamond as a color if it all makes sense. But then we figured out that there are so many people talking about color jewelry, which opens a very big opportunity for any brand to actually come up with a full range of color stone jewelry across the country or across the world. That was a very big insight. And to our surprise, and what we also figured out, that when Pantone was launched in the month of January of 2016, in the same month in April, Nykaa.com actually completely revamped their website and had a masthead on Pantone color products. And that in itself is giving you an idea that how a simple, straightforward analysis can reciprocate to a massive business decision, if that really gives a little bit of perspective of what data can do for you. There are more examples on data from that perspective. Today elections, they have social media information, website information, WhatsApp information. All these things have become extremely useful, and people are very, very critical about it, and they really want to know more and more about it. In 2014, during Maharashtra elections, we basically sat down and figured out which was the leading party who won, who has a maximum attention in social media. And to our surprise, whatever analysis we had produced, it was so accurate that by default, the journalist who actually approached us for this, they basically said that, can you do a prequel of this, that how did social media get it right when it came to Maharashtra elections? Now, these things are publicly available. You can easily go in and Google it and you can find it. But this is just to give you a hint that in future, there will be a lot more decisions which can be taken based on scraping information from publicly available sources, but compiling it together and correlating them also. And that is what I think will be a very, very valid point going forward in the future. So that is it in terms of, I know that there is a time limit on this, but if there are any other questions, I can take a few more, and then I will allow the next speaker to actually get into and entertain the audience which is there. So I see that there are no more questions overall. So I think so. I wish all the best to the Social Samosa team. This was entertaining and this was enjoyable. And I hope that we connect again. And if at all you want to get any more information around data and analytics in general, my handle is Nitin Speaks, available on Instagram as well as on Facebook. Please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you very much. Really enjoyed the session. All the best, Social Samosa.